few weeks ago, Nick and I did an episode of the Respawn Station podcast where we talked about the perfect gaming marriages. And the idea was that we essentially pitched cool games that we'd like to see, like a Mission Impossible game from IO Interactive or something. And one of the games that had been in my mind for a very long time, well, not a very long time, but, a few years now, is a Alien Isolation type game from, set in the Quiet Place universe. And The Quiet Place: A Road Ahead. Sorry, A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead. Did I say that right?
Yep. That is the correct title.
Is not that, but I also don't think it's trying to be that. So I want to explain. So let's start from the top. The game has you playing as a woman named Alex who finds out that she's pregnant. She's about 100 or so days into the end of the world, since the meteors came down with the Death Angels on them, and she has to survive and get to safety while escaping the Death Angels and stuff. First of all, I guess the easiest way to say it is, I think the game is good, but there are places where I think it could have been great and made the whole experience a little bit better. But of course, I'll talk about that kind of in the second half. The first things I'll say, right off the bat, the game looks pretty nice and it sounds pretty good, which are two of the kind of the core things when you're playing a horror game like this. Essentially, it's kind of like a stealth simulator, in terms of the whole game is centered around stealth mechanics. You cannot make a sound. There's obstacles all along the path that are, like leaves that could crunch under your footstep, or glass that's broken that if you step on, it'll crack and stuff that would kind of make a sound.
Now, just to kind of break up right there,
yeah,
what you're talking about, I'm going to go back to my experience, like watching the first Quiet Place, and this is kind of like the universal experience that everyone had, was that obviously the role of sound in that universe of A Quiet Place plays a very large role. And when you got to see it in a theater, that first movie,
yeah,
that initial sound, like when I believe the first thing that happened was the toy went off, right?
Yes, yeah.
Like that, like it invoked a reaction.
Yeah, because right from the credits, it's just quiet.
It's dead silent.
Yeah.
And like everyone knew the gimmick going in, but like somehow it still got you.
You weren't expecting it to be so fast, so like just to get right into it.
And like the sounds are just very jarring because it's so quiet in there, that like whenever you do hear something, it's like, holy shit, like I'm in danger.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have that kind of same reaction to sound as you're playing through the game, or is it a little bit of like you're out of that illusion of like sound because it is a video game and it's like not as immersive? How does that?
Yeah. So
how does that play into your experience?
Two things. So first of all, I also played the game. I didn't just play the game, fully locked in terms of like having headphones in and, playing in the dark. I also had noise detection on. And since I was playing on the PlayStation 5, it just used the microphone from my PlayStation 5 controller. And got to be honest, surprisingly, not like it didn't do too much in terms of like making me any more, like I was already quiet, I wasn't loud to begin with. I'm not just playing horror games like screaming.
You weren't like, oh my god, I have to sneeze, and doing like the stereotypical like somebody comes over and covers your nose.
There is one time, so over on my channel, youtube.com/SDSK, I had a video where it was just like a few clips of like on my hard drive that were from A Quiet Place, and one of them is my smart device saying it connected to my computer, like Bluetooth. And I was like, and so I was like in this middle of this intense sequence, and all of a sudden Bluetooth connected, and I was like, shit. So yeah, there's one time where I like stupidly, I don't know why, but like I just answered a call, and it's just me going hello, and then the monster's like whoa. So it was there's a few times where like that happened, but it wasn't ever like I accidentally like jumped and then gave myself away. Like that never happened. It was more sounds that are mostly out of my control that I was like, oh wait, that like the Roomba could kill me.
But so that those are the exact things. Is kind of like what I'm talking about. Is like obviously, especially in the movies, you're further along into this world. Like it's not 100 days. 100 days is still
the movie's
new
100
enough to where you learn
days,
things.
isn't it? Isn't it the same? Isn't the movie
I
like
thought
100
it was years after? No.
No, I think it's like 100.
Is it really that soon? I swore it was older. Like,
it could be. Look, I'm not
down.
a Quiet Place expert. I did.
Neither am I.
I did watch all 3 movies, but I haven't.
I watched the
watched
first 2. I have not watched day 1 yet.
I haven't watched.
I do plan on.
I believe that that one is set on day 1, if I'm correct. So there's at least.
Listen, we're not big on the Quiet Place.
Yeah.
I don't know if Quiet Place day 1 happens on day 1. But like what I was gonna say is that either way, like the sounds that are out of your control are the most anxious, like and ones that fill you with that feeling more so than anything else while you're watching the movies, because it's not like they can just cover someone's mouth or do things like that. Like of course those moments happen every now and again in the movies, but it's the toys that fall out, it's the crackling of leaves, it's like the bird
small things
fluttering, like it's small things like that you can't control that invoke the most reaction. So when those things accidentally happen in the world around you,
I can see.
Like how did you feel emotionally? Like did you go like, oh shit, like
did
you have that rush of like adrenaline that you're like, I need to fix this right now?
It does give you a bit of like, oh, like I need to reconsider when I'm playing this. But to kind of go back to your original question, I'm glad that in chat I see this is Nick, not Austin, Kevin. Yeah, that's true. This is Nick in HD. If you didn't know,
I just got a better camera.
Yeah. So to go back to your point, this is a video game. Like there are things that are so video gamified in this experience that it's hard not to realize that and kind of accept it. If you're looking for something that is like truly immersive and that you could almost like get lost in, which I would say like Alien Isolation is one such game in terms of like you're on the Nostromo and you're like, okay, I'm on this fucking spaceship trying to figure my way out. It's not quite the same experience.
And no one can hear you scream.
Yes, or sing. But but the difference is, so like what I mean by it's a video game is that there's constant yellow spray paint. Like anything you're interacting with is just yellow spray painted. Just so you know where to go going forward. There's also just
to be fair though, we did see that exact same thing also in the movies, where they had like the sand that you would literally just walk on, and it would be a perfect path from the store. Yeah, like so, like as not the cop like.
And there are sandbags that you can pick up and pour in front of you as you walk, in certain areas of the game to kind of quiet those footsteps.
Like dampen your footsteps. Yeah.
There's also like everything that is dangerous in terms of like there's like certain cans and buckets that will be left out that if you kick it'll make a sound. They're like spray painted red or like have like a red paint job on them, like a little bit. There's also, I mean, it's like there's a lot of those like, oh, you got to pick up the plank and then move it here and put it down, like these very things that you kind of get used to, if you know what I mean. So again, if you're fine with that, if you know that you want a video game experience and you're not there for full kind of character immersion, then that shouldn't be a problem. And here's another weird thing, like the main character Alex has asthma, and she you have to give her like use an inhaler occasionally to kind of calm her lungs, and like every inhaler you pick up is one use. You pick it up and go, and then
Yes.
in video games, like, yeah, sure, oh yeah, it's you use it once and then it's gone, like just like a battery, you use it once, it's gone. But inhalers don't work like that in real life.
Yeah, that's not how it works. Yeah, I mean, unless you get very unlucky and there just so happens to be one pump.
in every So it's like a little bit like that. That's again, you just have to understand that's part of the package.
You already kind of touched on it, but like Alien Isolation, for example, when a xenomorph is present,
yeah,
your heart drops. Like you're like,
yes, yeah,
I need to be super careful right now.
Yeah.
And I need to be very aware. Is it the same kind of concept and feeling when a creature from A Quiet Place comes? I don't think, do they have names?
Death Angels.
Death Angels.
Yes. Just like
never in a million years said
just
that.
Just like the Warhammer 40K chapter, the Space Marine chapter. The game is very centered around the Death Angels, and at first I was like, oh snap, like it's pretty significant how much I've seen these Death Angels, and I actually have it in my notes, like, oh, I wonder if my thoughts on this will change, but I think it's cool, like in terms of how they're using the Death Angels, because essentially the game for the most part is a set of environmental puzzles, right, that you have to navigate, in terms of like there's a bunch of traps and things that will fuck you over all along the path. You have to get from point A to point B, and how you get there is up to you, right? And in that sequence, they just plop a Death Angel in there, and it's constantly like hunting and like clicking and trying to find out if there's anything alive near it to beat to death. And again, at first is really intense. I think, but by the very end of the game, it is like, okay, I've made, like, maybe you could have taken the foot off the gas a little bit and just kept them a little bit more hidden, or like just not so repetitive, because that's kind of the core mechanic of the gameplay. And it's 8 hours. I think it should have been a little bit shorter if its main kind of enemy was just the Death Angels. Not to compare it to Alien Isolation, but I'm going to say it since you also just brought it up in the question. But like, and by the way, I also think that Alien Isolation is a little bit too long as well. But
yeah, 100%, because that game, especially because of how difficult it can be, it does keep going.
And Alien Isolation has a second villain, right? There's the Xenomorph, but then in the second half of the game, for a bit, there's these androids that come in that are like, fucking devious. In this game, they don't have that. They don't even have like a human threat. I'll say, like, they have an antagonist, but they don't have like an actual, like, I think it would have been pretty interesting if we saw the same mechanics that were used against the Death Angels, but you have a human on the look. So now instead of just being quiet, you have to also hide physically. I think that would maybe like change up the gameplay a bit.
Kind of like A Quiet Place 2, where they had the people that were like,
oh yeah, sure,
trying to break into their house.
And I
think they were trying to like get the daughter or something like that, right?
I don't remember.
Either way, like I remember very distinctly that they were like because they found themselves in like a encampment that was already like guarded, and then the guy died who was like actually living there, so they just inhabited that area, and then they like someone saw them come in, so they were trying to come in and get them. So I think that would have been nice to have somebody who's like not afraid of these Death Angels, and they're just like, bring it. Like, what are you gonna do? Kill me?
And I do think that it's also, I could see the term walking simulator being thrown around for this game. Personally, I think that mantling simulator is much more of an appropriate name, because you're walking, you do a fair amount of walking, but there is so much mantling in this freaking game, Austin. And look, this game loves its squeezing through tight spaces animation, like you go up and it's just like your character has to shimmy along a little space. That's common, but there's also, there's a thing in my notes that I wrote down, which was I had to climb up onto a box which was one press of an X. Then I had to climb the fence on the other side, which was, to go to the other side, which is another press of an X. And on the other side, I had to climb down from the box on the other side, which was a third press of the X. Dude, Liam Neeson does this in 5 shots in Taken 3. We don't need this. I'm not Liam Neeson. I don't need to do this many interactions to get across a fence. It should be I do it from one side and it just mantles the whole thing. But I get it. They're trying to play on the idea of like the slowness and the suspense. And I played the game on normal difficulty, and that slowness and suspense is really good if you don't die. If you make it through the sequences in one go, it's awesome, because then like you maintain a level of high. That's not what you maintain a level of like intensity that and you keep it at that high for the whole time if you don't die. If you do die, what ends up happening is and I didn't die too often, but it's just
you get like desensitized.
Yeah, exactly. And you move so slowly that like every time you die, you're like, okay, fuck, I want to do this a little bit faster because I've already been through this. And it's like this fine balance. And then eventually, again, with seeing the Death Angels for so much of the game, by the end of the game, if I die like 2 or 3 times, I'm able to like kind of cheese them almost in terms of like how I'm getting around. Not perfectly. They definitely do. They do kill you pretty fast. But you get the general. You can do things that are like a little bit more cheeky that you might not do in real life, or they might not try in the movies, for example. The experience overall, for me, as a person who likes to play a lot of single player stuff, I do think that I like the single player like horror narrative driven experience of it. I just think that it doesn't. It really boils down to that it's not a significant story. Like it doesn't have. This is not a story that has importance in the world of A Quiet Place, right? Like again, I hate to keep comparing it to Alien Isolation, but I think it's kind of the direct point I've made. But that game, you play as Ripley's daughter, who's like trying to find her mom, right? And so it feels there's like some like direct connection and relation there that the game kind of picks up right after the movies. I didn't really feel that here, and I actually think that while I did like the ending, it could have actually been a little bit better if it ended like 30 seconds sooner, because I think it would have made it more like the movie, like in terms of how the first movie ended. But I also think that it's that plus being a bit too long without enough narrative payoff. Those two things for me were the drawbacks that held it back from being great. But while I am playing it, it was intense, and I can't deny that. And even though I wasn't emotionally invested, I was still kind of very, curious about how I was going to figure out each kind of environmental puzzle that the game was putting me in. So that's my thoughts on A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead from Stormmind Games, or Stormmind. Actually, there's no 2 M's, there's no space. Stormmind Games. It was very interesting that we've actually covered their first game, Batora Lost. I think it's called Batora Lost Heaven, or the Lost Heaven, or the Lost Haven. I think that's what it is. We covered that 2 years ago on our website, and so you can read our preview thoughts on Batora over on RespawnStation.com. And soon you'll be able to read my hopefully more comprehensive and cohesive written review of A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead over there as well. So the dog is barking. The dog's chilling. He's got a lot to say about A Quiet Place.
Yeah, he would not survive.
You don't think so?